Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I'm joined here as always by the world's biggest Las Vegas Raiders fan, Kyle. Kyle, how are you doing?
I am doing great. We're gonna have a lot to talk about with the Raiders, so everybody better strap in. I don't think Raiders fans are gonna like us too much after this.
Well, Raiders fans notoriously have always hated you, so this is nothing new. This is not new territory for you.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I don't say anything that disrespectful. I think the first year we did this podcast, I picked them to finish last, and guess what? They finished last. And then
I think Raiders fans hate you for being consistently correct on your preseason predictions with them.
Yeah, I know. And even when I'm like, I think we did I still remember we did like the top 25 players under 25. And I had Max Crosby like fourth or something ridiculous. And he was behind like the three quarterbacks. And like, I don't know. I feel like I was kind of justified based on last season. But I don't know. It wasn't good enough.
Yeah, no, they're a rowdy bunch, Raiders fans. Zachary Stewart in the chat says, I just became an official Florida man. We are growing in numbers. Either congratulations or condolences, depending on, how you like it.
Condolences right now. It's too hot.
Yeah,
We've had
it's tough.
I'm in Texas, but I mean, we've had 100-degree weather for like 3 months straight. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I used to always say, "Oh man, I would hate to live up, north where it gets cold." I see some logic. I still would much rather this than having to, deal with 0-degree weather. But it's starting to become more of a conversation.
Yeah. It's too hot. It is too hot. I would take up north right now.
Yeah, right now, certainly. I believe we're doing what you always want to do, starting off a podcast, talking about the weather. That's always the hot button discussion that gets people going.
We're like old men. This should just be like a 55 and over podcast. Just complain about the weather. Complain about tipping. We can complain about that. Too much tipping nowadays. So I can go on all day.
My hot take is I don't mind tipping, but maybe that's a conversation for another day. I like seeing lower wage people get money. But let's talk about the 4 teams before we get too into the weeds. 4 teams to talk about. Going over to AFC West, our second to last preseason podcast. Next week is our last preseason podcast. Then we're going to start the season preview. We're right into it. As we always do with these shows, we're going to go 4 through 1, talking about you're going to give your rankings, and then I'm going to go through each position group, talk about them in depth, give a tier 1 through 5 ranking, and then give my record prediction through each team. There are 3 teams in this division that I think, if not Super Bowl aspirations, at least have real contender aspirations. That's their goal. Like, that's what they're telling themselves in the locker room. There's also the Raiders. Who do you have finishing 4th in this division?
Yeah, I do think 3 of these teams can make the playoffs, but I was just doing my I was just kind of jotting down my preseason predictions today, and this conference is ridiculous. Like, 2 of these teams I think are really good and are probably going to miss the playoff by a couple games potentially. But so I do have this as the 4th best division because I do think 3 of these teams have a path to the playoffs, but it's going to take a little bit to happen in this conference. That being said, I have the Raiders 4th.
How dare you? Boo! Everyone, boo!
I know. L's in the chat here. Here we go.
Yes.
Look, there are certainly still some stars on this Raiders team. I touched on them beforehand. Max Crosby is a legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year because this defense isn't going to be good around him, but he's legitimately one of the best defensive players in football. And I still stand by that. I felt that last year. He played even better this past season than he had the years before. So he's only gotten better. He's incredible. You got, Colton Miller's a stud at left tackle. Devontae Adams is a stud at wide receiver. Josh Jacobs, debatably the best running back in football last year. All of that is true. But everything around those guys, those 4 or 5 guys is crap. This is all crap. And it's not going to be good this season. And this is a very difficult division to manage, especially, when you look at this defense against the quarterbacks they have to play. This is going to be rough. So, yeah, I think the Raiders to me are a sneaky number 1 pick contender. I think that's where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes back to let's start off with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a tier 4 quarterback in my rankings. I mean, we kind of talked about this I didn't love the signing at the time because it kind of feels like all it's going to do is get you further away from where you want to be. He's not good enough to consistently get you wins, but he's also not bad enough to get you a top pick.
I Are we sure he's not?
I mean, I think I think if they really want, it's not a tank. It's a clear move to say that they're not tanking, right? Because if they were tanking, they would say, let's just see what Aiden O'Connell's got.
Maybe. I don't know. There's an Aiden O'Connell hive now.
I mean, he's looked good in the preseason, but I'm just saying, before we knew that, we would have said, oh, let's just draft someone in the mid round and pretend that we are in love with him.
Yeah. Everybody who's a fan of Aiden O'Connell had no idea he was playing in the Big Ten championship last season.
Right.
That's for sure. But I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy G away from Kyle Shanahan is not great this year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's good enough to be the number one or bad enough to be a quarterback of the number one pick team away from Kyle Shanahan. We're going to see. But it does feel like they're trying to at least pitch that stopgap option. But I don't know what he's going to look like without Shanahan.
Yeah. He has had you've shown some flashes in a couple of games with Josh McDaniels as offensive coordinator with New England. Now he reunites with Josh McDaniels, who is currently a Tier 5 head coach. Maybe the funniest outcome once they decided to sign Josh McDaniels is he's exactly like he was in Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when he's, maybe some people, Josh McDaniels, are good offensive coordinators and bad head coaches. And I think that's okay. He could be a very good offensive coordinator anywhere in the NFL. Maybe he's just not a head coach. That's probably what it is.
Yeah. It's tough so far. The bright side is, I think easily the best part of this team is their weapons. I think that they actually have legitimately a good receiving core with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Hunter Renfrow. Renfro's coming off a tough season, but who isn't coming off a tough season for the Raiders in the weapons room, I guess, other than Devontae Adams? I wish they, kept Darren Waller, but Austin Hooper and they drafted Michael Mayer, who both should be good options. So they, this is to me, they're easily their best thing. I'm going to give it a tier 2 receiving core.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Assuming that Renfrow plays better this next season. And, Myers, he's not going to get a lot after the catch, but he's going to be able to go over the middle and make some plays. So I think he was a good signing just because he does some things pretty well.
Yeah. This is the plus side. I also think we could do the Jacoby Myers talk for a bit. I think Jacoby Myers was really good last year, and I think he's a really good role player for an offense. He's not someone you want as the number one option, as we saw with New England at times, but he is definitely someone who I think who will contribute well.
I think he's going to be a lot better now that he's a number 3 potentially, or number 2. Maybe like a 2-.
2A.
Yeah. I think that's a better probably role for him, where he was kind of shadowing as the number 1 guy in New England. My only thing with Myers, I do think he's good. I think he's very sure-handed. I think he runs good routes. I think he does a lot of things well. He's just not very dynamic, right? You're not going to expect him to go get 7 catches, 115 yards, and maybe a touchdown, and have these big create these explosive plays. He's going to be very methodical. He's going to get his receptions, and he's going to probably go down immediately. That's probably all he's going to be, and that's why he's not a number 1, because he's not creating those explosives.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. The offensive line for the Raiders, you have Colton Miller. You talked about him earlier. Franchise left tackle. He's definitely very good. You also have for the interior, Dylan Parham, who looked solid last year in a small sample size, Andre James, and I guess Alex Bars is currently listed at the right guard position. The guard situation is they need another guard in the mix. You would think. I'm not sure who exactly would start. I mean, they have Greg Van Roten as well. So I mean, seems like he would probably be the guy. But not a disaster there necessarily. Jermaine Illuminor looked good last season. So it's a fine offensive line. I don't think that there's, assuming that if they can get a good season out of Greg Van Roten, I guess, or Alex Bars, whichever one to end up being the starter, they'll then it's maybe a little bit higher, but tier 3 offensive line for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just it doesn't feel like, we've talked about some of these offensive lines where it's like, okay, we're waiting for young guys to pan out. So like it's a tier 3 offensive line or a tier 4 offensive line, but there's the chance for it to be a tier 2 offensive line sort of thing, right?
Hmm.
That's kind of what we've been talking about with some of these younger offensive lines. This just kind of feels like a tier 3 offensive line that might be like a tier 4 offensive line.
Yeah.
I feel like its ceiling is tier 3 and its floor is probably tier 4 just because I don't really think there's a lot of high upside besides Miller.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I said the wide receiving team group is probably the best part about this team. Probably, Josh Jacobs is probably the best part about this team if we're not taking positional value into account. Tier 1 halfback room. Again, he was amazing last year, and they still do have some depth. Zamir White, Brandon Bolden. If you're a Brandon Bolden head, yeah, you can get excited about that. Not a ton of depth, to be honest, but I think Zamir White's shown a little bit of flashes like in preseason and stuff. So, but Jacobs is the guy who puts them up there.
Yeah, I mean, Jacobs is terrific. He's one of the best backs in the league. He proved it last year. He went out and had a career year when they kind of challenged him to because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, and he went out and played good enough to. I think they gave him the franchise tag, right? Wasn't that the deal?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that basically went how he wanted and how they wanted. They wanted him to get in the franchise tag, and he's going to have an opportunity to do it again and then maybe make some more money. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So that's the offense. The defense is interesting. So the coverage unit, they added Marcus Peters, which is like, again, one of those like, oh, why are you the one who's ending up with Marcus Peters in this scenario? But they're trying to win, and I think it'll certainly help them on the football field. You have other guys who I'm interested in. You still have Nate Hobbs. What are we getting out of Nate Hobbs? You have Amick Robinson. You have Duke Shelley. A 6th-round pick from a few years ago who graded really highly according to PFF in his 470 snaps. So that's interesting. Brandon Faiskin's the guy who every time I watch tape, I'm like, look out for this Brandon Faiskin guy. He's gonna be good someday, and it's just not happening so far. And then for the safeties, Marcus Epps, Sam Webb, and then Trayvon Moorhig, who another guy had a really good rookie year, but did not have a good second year. So what are we getting out of Moorhig? I don't know. So it's kind of a really hard coverage unit to evaluate. I think I'm going to go tier 4 though, just because there's so much unproven guys here.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have even argued against tier 5 at this point. I mean, like I think there is potential here. Like you said, it could get better if Morig looks better, if Peters, is healthy and stays healthy and has one of his good seasons rather than one of his bad seasons. I guess my one question is that second corner spot, just because I think Hobbs is still pretty good, but I still think he's a slot guy.
Yeah.
And how are they going to fill that outside guy? Is it going to be like you said, a face on? Is it going to be a Robertson? Who's going to take over that outside corner spot?
Yeah, that's the question. As for the front 7, it's another thing where like there's players here. You brought up Max Crosby. Max Crosby's great, and Chandler Jones had that one big play that you would like to forget with now current teammate Jacoby Myers. Giving him the football, allowing him to stiff arm poor Mac Jones to get a touchdown out of it. Chandler Jones was not spectacular last season. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. They drafted Tyree Wilson, which I think they're going to hope that he can just come in and be, like those are the 3 guys. Crosby, he's an 1,000 snap player. He pretty much stays out there every snap, and then Jones and Wilson can kind of split the other duos there. Interior could use some work. You have Bayo Nichols, John Jenkins on the interior, so they could definitely use, Jerry Tillery. I don't know if we're getting something out of him. I'm not banking on it. Interior could use some work, and I think the linebacker core could use some work as well. I mean, you have Divine Diablo, who's weirdly turned into like a player for them, but like still not a spectacular one. I don't know if Robert Spillane is the other linebacker in the mix. They have some real issues up the middle. So to be honest, I'm going to give this a tier 5 run defense. I just don't think this is spectacular, and I'll give it tier 3 pass rush. Crosby's awesome, but like they just don't have anyone to help out Crosby.
Yeah, they need Wilson to be good is the problem.
Yeah.
There are guys here, like, I don't know. There are guys here that we've seen be pretty good. Like, obviously Wilson is a rookie, so we haven't seen it, but obviously he was good enough to be drafted that high and a high enough prospect. I know you weren't as big of a fan of his, but that athleticism pops with him. It's legit.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a lot of opportunities to go one-on-one with Crosby on the other side. We've seen guys like Adam Butler's put together solid seasons at defensive tackle. But the question is, can they come in here and do it here? I don't know. We'll see on that. They weren't good last year. And I don't really anticipate this being a good front seven this year outside of Crosby.
Yeah, and you're like, and Wilson's one of those guys where it's like, I liked him more than I liked Trayvon Walker from the year prior, because it's not like he had no production in college. He was definitely one of those, pure athlete, getting drafted for that reason, not necessarily because of the numbers and the advanced stats and stuff like that. But like, I think there's a chance he could hit. I also think it might take him some time if he does hit. Like, I think the most likely outcome if he hits is that like he hits sort of towards the end of this year, or like really like next year, or maybe even a year in the future. So like there's hope, but how much hope is there for this year? I think that seems unlikely. But again, who knows with young players?
Yeah. It's throwing darts a little bit at this point, but I mean, he definitely has potential. He had some flashes in college, like you said. His production numbers, his tackle for loss numbers are great. I will say, listening to some college football stuff, they think that defense is going to be better now that he's gone. I don't know why. I don't know if they just like the infrastructure there, but I mean, Texas Tech is pretty optimistic about their team this year. But I mean, I still think he's a good player.
Yeah. I did put up the poll 12 minutes ago. I put it up right when the podcast started. Because once again, I forgot. Currently, Raiders are actually in third place with 10% predicting them to win. But again, a lot of Raiders Nation hangs around the Jackson Cougar Sports channel, so it might be a little bit of a bias. It's not necessarily a perfectly spread out survey here.
Yeah, I was gonna say shocking that the Raiders have a skewed number.
Yeah, but even with the Raiders skewed number, it's still just third of 10%.
So what's the scenario for this team being good?
Well, so my prediction is 7-10. So I don't think they're like a disastrous roster, because they do have the receiving talent. They do have, a good running game and like a solid offensive line. So like, if Jimmy Garoppolo can just be Jimmy Garoppolo and get the most out of the offense, that should be pretty good. Like, to me, that's kind of how they can, they can win some games that way. And then, like I said, with all these, like, if one of those corners steps up, like if Peters is good, and then let's just say, I don't know, like Nate Hobbs goes back to what he can do, and then Duke Shelley ends up having a good year. Like, okay, well, now it could at least be, okay, the run defense would still suck, but now it could at least be like a competent defense with an above average offense.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like the most optimistic scenario is McDaniels coaches an awesome offense with some weapons. I mean, because like, realistically, do you see this being a top 20 defense in football under any circumstances? I know
wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And I mean, I don't see the talent there outside of one guy. Like, I mean, even a guy like Marcus Peters, I think Peters is a nice player, but I think he's also a guy who's kind of thrived in that number 2 corner role in Baltimore. Like, we've seen him be a number 1 corner in his past, and it was just kind of like, okay, like, he's solid. He comes up with some big plays. He's good with, he's a good playmaker, getting the ball. But I don't think he's the number 1 like lockdown guy. And that's who they're going to rely on. And the last time we asked him to be that number 1 guy was what, 5-6 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even if you're looking at that as a number 1 guy, I'm not even sure this is number 1 guy. And you have questions about your number 2 guy, and your second best defensive player might be your slot corner. Like, that feels like the defense. I mean, that could be a bottom 3 defense, bottom 4 defense.
Yeah, it's probably more likely it's more likely this is the worst defense in football than a top 10 defense, I think, is how I would view it. Also, DG in the chat said, I think the other outside corner will be Janorkin Bennett, who, okay, maybe that's the case, but he's still a 4th round draft pick from this year. Like, it's still not it's still not really getting you too excited, but you never know.
Yeah. Maybe he hits. Maybe he hits, and this works out okay. But even then, like, if Jacorian Bennett hits, is that I'm still betting on this being like a bottom 10 defense in the league.
Yeah. They got some work to do. There's 3 teams left. I think here's where the conversation is probably the most interesting. I think most people will have the same number 1 and number 4, but you could argue either way here. I know last year you were all on the Denver train. Are you, which team do you have finishing third here?
Yeah, I kept going back and forth with this one. I am going to put Denver here at third. And maybe just because I was snake bitten last year because I was pretty high on this team, but little did I know that they had a little bit of a coaching issue last year. We'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is upside for the Denver Broncos. I think this defense is going to be nasty again. I think Patrick Surtain has cemented himself as one of the top 5 corners in football this quickly, which has just been impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I think, they traded some pieces, but the pieces they still have in the building are really talented and really impressive. The biggest question with this team, though, and, as I, talk about this defense, it just doesn't matter, though, because if they can't put up points and it looks like they did last year and Russell Wilson's bad, this team is going to flame out again. But it all comes down to how can Sean Payton work with this offense? How can Sean Payton kind of revitalize Russell Wilson? And is there still a Russell Wilson that can be revitalized? I don't know. I really don't know. So that's my biggest question heading into the season. It's everyone's biggest question on this team. And that's why I feel like the Broncos are third, even if they might have higher upside.
Yeah, it just it really is all that thing. I mean, Sean Payton, I had him as a tier 1 head coach. I had him at number 5 on my coaching rankings. Russell Wilson currently, he gets tier 3 credit. Like, I don't know what to, rank Russell Wilson. He's, the odds of him being a tier 3 quarterback next year seem slim because he was like a tier 5 quarterback last year. But, in previous years, he had been a consistent, like, if not tier 1, he would like be on the fringe tier 2, but like usually like, low tier 1, high tier 2. Sometimes even high tier 1 in specific years for Seattle. So it's like, it really just all comes down to that question. And that's kind of why predictions are hard, is because if Wilson hits and is awesome, this team, is a real contender, but is he going to hit? I don't know. Maybe some people have predictions. They have guesses. I'm lost.
Yeah, I'm lost on it too. I guess it's just kind of a wait and see mode. Like, was it this bad?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like, I don't know. I think there's very real questions about if he doesn't have his speed, if he doesn't have his elusiveness at, being able to move around in the pocket, move outside, all the stuff that made Russell Wilson great. We talk about what like Patrick Mahomes does really well in his ability to kind of never get sacked, by time, run around, and then make an impossible throw. Russell Wilson had a lot of that in his game. Even it wasn't as good as like peak Mahomes, obviously. He had a lot of that in his game at his peak in Seattle. That elusiveness, that ability to never get sacked, keep his eyes downfield, make throws. If he doesn't have that mobility anymore, does he have the ability to throw in the pocket? Does he have the throwing ability in the pocket to be able to still be a good quarterback?
Let's talk about the receiving core, why don't we? Because this was the big talking point last year was Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler. Look at all these weapons. Didn't work out that well. Tim Patrick has another injury now, which just like completely sucks. Courtland Sutton got banged up, and he's only had that one good year at this point. Like that 1 year is kind of looking closer to being an exception or not than just who he is. Jerry Jeudy was good last year. Jerry Jeudy, he had some injuries as well, but he was mostly good last year. But even like KJ Hamler, like I still haven't seen it. Greg Dulcich, I like the potential, but I haven't seen it. This is a receiving core with a ton of potential, but I haven't yet seen it all on play out. So I'm going tier 4 receiving core, and it was a tier 5 receiving core last year. A lot of that was injuries. I'm also going to go tier 3 running back room with Javonte Williams, who I like, although he is coming off an injury. So that kind of bumped. I was in between tier 2 and tier 3. Samandre P. also there, but I'm going tier 3.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that because, I mean, Jeudy made a significant leap last year. I thought he got much better last season, no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But is Jerry Jeudy a top 15 number 1 option, top 16 number 1 option? I would
Probably
say
not.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, that's still not great as your number 1. And then, like you said, you lost your number 3 option. So it's basically you need Sutton to kind of have a bounce back season, and you need one of these guys, which they have what. Marquez Callaway, which is the most Sean Payton thing ever.
Right.
And Lil Jordan Humphrey, it's like it's shocking these guys keep ending up back with these same coaches.
Mhm. Right.
So yeah, I mean they need somebody to hit as that number 3 guy now because they lost that guy. So yeah, I am concerned a little bit about the depth of this receiving core because I don't really think there's a lot of good players. Like you start getting into the after Sutton, who I don't even think is that strong of a number 2, you're getting into Marvin Mims, Kendall Hinton, America's favorite quarterback, Marquez Callaway. I mean, it's just not great.
I mean, the way that this works out, right? It's the Sean Payton effect because like we've seen it happen plenty of times where they have like a not great receiving core and he makes it great. Like that's what they're banking on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna have to get one of these guys to hit. I don't know who it is, but yeah, I mean, maybe he just continues to do that again, and maybe by the end of the year, we're talking about Brandon Johnson as the guy or something weird like that.
Yeah. We'll see. The offensive line's interesting. This is maybe the best part about this team, the offensive line. I think it's very good. You asked me last week, have I given out all of my tier 1 offensive lines yet? I said no. I still had one more to give out. This is that other 5th on my offensive line rankings. So this is the other tier 1 with a Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey as the 2 tackles. Very good tackle combo there. Ben Powers and Quinn Marinitz as both the guards who are also very good. Lloyd Cushenberry is the weak spot of this offensive line, but you can kind of get away with a weak spot at the center position. Sean Payton loves his offensive lines. They added Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, and on paper, it looks very good. I have it as tier 1.
Yeah, like you said, I think you just about hit everything. They spent a pretty penny on McGlinchey, but he's a good right tackle, so
Yeah.
that's gonna help. Cushenberry, like you said, he's probably the weak link, but like I don't think he's a total disaster either. Like I think he can be better, so we'll
hmm
see. But I think overall, you still have 4 really good players on that offensive line, and maybe you figure out center.
Yeah. So that's the offense. Let's go over to the defense. Why don't we? Starting off with the corners. You brought up Patrick Surtain, obviously a guy who is very good, has totally lived up to that draft hype. I think that they're okay about having him as opposed to Mac Jones right now. Although they would feel much
I
better
don't
about
know.
it if Russell Wilson. Okay, well, again, we'll see. I guess you're right. You never know. The other who's going to be the other corner is an interesting question. You have Damari Mathis, Fabian Moreau, Kwan Williams. They mixed and matched last year effectively, and you also have a good safety duo with Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons. So who's the other guy? That is still a bit of a question for me, but they mixed and match. I'm assuming Kwan Williams will be, he could be the guy. We'll see. Who knows? But although I think he might be more of a slot guy as well. You also have, Carden Stearns in the mix. I'm going to go, I don't know. Is it crazy to go tier 2 coverage here? Is that a crazy hot take, not going tier 1? Just because I'm a little concerned about the number 2 corner spot?
Um, yeah, I guess that's fine. Like I don't know, Damari Mathis is not the best option, so I guess that's fair. He had a solid rookie year, so maybe he gets better. And then this is a tier 1 group. I think that's fair. Long term, keep an eye on Riley Moss. That guy's a ball hawk. I'm excited to see if he pans out in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, if you look at though Jackson, Simmons, and Surtain, it doesn't get much better than those 3 to start. If they're able to have one of these guys hit as a second corner, this immediately vaults to tier 1 and maybe number 1.
Yeah, completely. I would bet on it being over exceeding as opposed to under exceeding. It's closer to tier 1 than tier 3 for me. The front 7. Randy Gregory is back for the moment, at least. What will we get out of Randy Gregory? They added Nick Clark. You still have Nick Benito at Frank Clark. You still have Nick Benito in the mix at the edge rusher position. Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper are other players. Interior, you got Zach Allen, DJ Jones. On the inside, they did lose, what's his name, to Seattle with that big contract. But I still think on paper this is a pretty solid. You have also Mike Purcell on the inside in the mix. So as a whole, this is a pretty solid group. I think the question is like, who's the star in the mix? They don't really have a star, just kind of like solid players across the board. So I don't know. I think I'm gonna go tier 3s across the board here, and maybe I'm a little bit lower on the Broncos defense than I should be. But I want to see who's gonna in a key third down, be the guy who can beat a tackle and get to the quarterback. Maybe that's Randy Gregory, but we'll see.
Yeah, I guess the best version of Randy Gregory is probably that guy, right?
Yeah, but Randy Gregory's never been like I mean, they kind of paid him like a star, but he's really only had that one, like, I mean, I don't know if he's ever really had a complete great season.
Has he not? I thought he had one really good year. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just talking. Yeah, I mean, I guess 6 sacks in 1 year. So I mean, he's a good player, but yeah, maybe he's just not a great player. Maybe one of these younger guys, whether it's like a Nick Benito or something like that. I don't know, but like I don't know. There is a bunch of solid guys here, like you mentioned. Zach Allen, I think, is a good player. Gregory, when he's healthy and on the field, I think is a good player. Jewell and Singleton and linebackers are good players. So I do think, and Frank Clark's not a stiff. He was just expensive. So I do think there are some nice pieces here. Like you said, I don't think there's a weak link, I think is the big thing.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you. So as a whole for the Broncos, like, again, there's things to like about this team. There really is. And there's not a ton of weaknesses, but I kind of felt like, last year, part of why I was low on them was I kind of said, like, what are you great at? Yeah, there's things that you can do well, but what are you particularly great at? And I don't really see, I don't know what they have to do. So, I'm going to go 9-8 for them. With their record, 9-8 is going to be kind of how I view it. Of just like, and again, it's weird because if Russell Wilson hits, they're obviously higher than 9 wins. But like, will he hit is the question. And if he, as bad as he was last year, they're less than 9 wins. But I'm going to go 9-8. That kind of feels about right.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I do think there is the upside for a 9-win team. I'm just not 100% sure I don't know. It's just so tough looking at this division, looking at this conference to be able to guess that. So I think that's the biggest problem I have with this team. But I mean, if everything works out on the offense, I could see a 9-win team. But like, if the offense is not like good, is this enough of a defense to kind of figure it out?
Well, I mean, it wasn't last year, right? I mean, in last year, I don't know if it's going to repeat the success it did last year as well, because that's just not how defenses work.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good defense. I think it can be a great defense, but I think it really needs to be a really awesome offense, or not an awesome offense. It needs to be a much better offense. And maybe Sean Payton kind of figures this out. So maybe at this time it kind of all comes together, but I'm not ready to trust Russell Wilson yet based on what I saw last year. And that's my biggest concern, but I do see a scenario where this team's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. We have a chat. I remember when they said this exact same thing last year and said the Broncos could beat the Chiefs. We said the Broncos were mediocre last year, that they could beat the Chiefs. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know if we said that. I was high on the Broncos last year. I'll give you that. But
I mean, I think I was lower on the Chiefs, but I'm pretty sure I was even lower on the Broncos.
Yeah, I think that's probably yeah, you were much lower on the Broncos than me. That's for sure.
Yeah. But who knows? Maybe I was, I don't know. Maybe we did. Who knows? Also, I started laughing when you were saying that. I went to go check the poll again. Broncos, only 3%, amazingly. People are not buying into the Russell Wilson hype to win the division. Also, the Raiders have now jumped up to number 2. So they are now number 2 in the, maybe they'll go up to 1. Currently at 12%. Raiders Nation, they love to be high under Raiders.
Broncos country has not ridden to your your chat room, that's for sure.
Yeah, not necessarily, or maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe they're a bit more Raiders fans are just the best. This is why the Raiders fans are the best. They haven't won a playoff game since 2002. Like, that's the last time they've won and yet they're still every year, this is the year everyone's sleeping on the Raiders, like, constantly.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think you could even like talk yourself. We're getting back to the Raiders for no reason, but like, yeah, I don't know. This is definitely not the year I see the optimism. This is not it. But it's a, be passionate. It's okay.
Yeah,
your passion
Jets,
is awesome.
Like, Jets fans have Aaron Rodgers and like, yeah, but we're the Jets, so we'll see how it goes. Raiders fans are like Jimmy Garoppolo, MVP, or Aiden O'Connell, the next best thing. I love it. It's what sports are all about.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's fair. So
There's two teams left. One that the chat has projected to finish third. Another chat is projecting to finish first. Or I say chat, the community poll it's projected. Chargers and Chiefs. Are you going with a crazy hot take here, Kyle?
I am not. I'm taking the Chargers here at number 2. That would just be disrespectful to pick the defending Super Bowl champs not to finish first at this point. Who would do that? Um, but
You would have been right last year.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
This Chargers team, I thought had a very good offseason. I really like the Kellen Moore hiring as offensive coordinator. I like the pieces that they have on offense. I think this is a good offensive line. I think it's a good receiving core. I think it's a good backfield. Justin Herbert, I think, is the man. I think he's on the precipice of becoming a MVP candidate year after year after year. There are questions about this defense, and we're going to see how this pans out. It cannot go any worse for JC Jackson this season. And because of that, and because I think this secondary will get better with a better, healthy JC Jackson, I think this defense gets better. There are still holes here, but I think that helps a lot. And so I got the Chargers competing for a playoff spot. Even if they just miss out just because of how competitive this conference is, I think they're close.
Yeah, it's just interesting because the conference is tough. I mean, this has been a team that I feel like people have been talking themselves into the Chargers year after year after year, right? I feel like for the past 3 years, I've been lower on the Chargers than everyone else, and kind of they've been just like a fine team, like a fringe playoff team consistently. They have done things to try to make that better. Two most important people in the organization, Brandon Staley and Justin Herbert, with the quarterback and head coach. Obviously, Herbert, I have his tier 2 quarterback right now, closer to a tier 1 than tier 3, but he still is tier 2. And then Brandon Staley was tier 5 because I don't even know what he's doing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance he's on his way out if this goes south early.
Yeah, I think they have to at least win a playoff game for him to save his job.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's too much pressure now. You have a super talented quarterback on a rookie deal. You have to capitalize on this, no matter how hard this conference is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because it's crazy that they haven't been able to do more with what Herbert's given them on his rookie deal, which is basically over after this year. It's crazy that they haven't been able to do more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the pressure is definitely on. He has no more excuses. They fired the offensive coordinator to kind of save his job, and now at this point, he has to prove that he is that guy, and he can be that guy. And there's no one else to fire but him because they're not firing Justin Herbert.
Yeah. The wide receiving core. One thing they did that I really liked is the wide receiving core. They drafted Quentin Johnston, who was my number 1 receiver coming out of draft class. And I thought it was a pretty big jump between 1 and 2. And they got him at a pretty reasonable spot to add to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Now, who's going to be the number 3 option there? Who's going to play the slot? Because they kind of are all outside guys. That's the question. You also have Gerald Everett in the mix. And Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly are the 2 running backs currently. I'll give it a tier 2 running back room, and I'm gonna go. I'll go tier 1 wide receiving room. Well, why not? With the addition of Quentin Johnston, who Kyle, I know you're not a big preseason guy, so I don't know how much you've checked out. Quentin Johnston has been uncoverable this preseason. Unfortunately, even if no one was near him, he still isn't getting all the catches because he dropped a bunch of passes the first preseason game. Although game 2 he was much better.
Well, the uncoverable part's good to hear at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to have to clean up the drops. I am high on this receiving core. I think they got 4 guys who can really play. I think Palmer's even solid too as a number 5 option. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I hear what you're saying with the who's going to play on the inside. How does this work? This almost feels like just kind of a basketball conundrum where you're, just put the talented players together and figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
I
old
think
draft Michael Jordan and play him at center thing.
Yeah, you figure it out. So just put I think Keenan Allen can step in and play the slot if he has to. So just figure that part, just figure that out as you go. You got the 3 most talented players there, so you have to feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, we have a Space Beast with a super chat. We appreciate that. Space Beast says, "This is great. You're doing live. Are you chat discussing?" I'm assuming. I'm not sure exactly what that refers to, but we will read comments from the chat if that's what the question is. Then we have Kyle doesn't like the people in the chat. That's true. And then we have
Whoa,
podcast is international. Even have people from space chiming in. So yeah, all true points there.
that's bigger than international. Podcast is galactic.
Yeah, and yeah.
Let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kyle, would you respond to the rumors that you don't like people in the chat?
I don't like people in general, but I have no issues with the chat.
Yeah, I think we like you. I mean, you're the ones who give us, allow us to be able to at least, my living is making videos, so I'm a big fan of all of you guys.
Yeah, I'm a marginal fan of all of you guys. I try and moderate you when you go down the rabbit hole of like arguing about Daniel Jones or something. But overall, you guys do a good job. Keep asking good questions.
Yes, we also have a Space G saying, "Love your channel, Kyle." Yes, everyone is a big fan of Kyle's secret channel.
I have a great YouTube channel. Everyone should check it out.
Yeah, it's weird how you won't let me ever plug it on this show. You demand that no one can know about it.
Yeah, trying to keep the subscriber count low. I don't need to get paid.
Right? Yeah, you make a real effort to make sure no one subscribes. You always start off your episodes. Make sure you do not hit the subscribe button.
I don't even want views. Just leave before it starts. Get out.
Yes, exactly. Right. The Chargers. Let's go to the offensive line. Why don't we? I don't know if we covered the receiving core fully, but we got enough of it. An interesting offensive line. You got Rashawn Slater. Looks like Trey Pipkins would be the other tackle here. I would assume. You also have Jameer Slater, who I believe they're going to have play left guard in this scenario with Zion Johnson, the former first round pick, and Corey Lindsley, the very highly paid center who is very good when healthy. Tier 2 offensive line for me here with the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they have Twitter's favorite person, Will Clapp, in the the backups. Have you seen all the memes?
No.
Anytime someone posts someone attractive on Twitter, someone posts the page Will Clapp.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
It's humorous when I see it every now and then.
Okay.
Anyway, like I don't know. I think Johnson's gonna get better at guard. Pipkins has kind of been a weird player his entire career. He's had some really good years and some bad years. So like he's probably the weak link, but at the same time, like we've seen him be solid too.
Yeah, and that's kind of why it's fallen a little bit and why it's not quite tier 1. But the other guys are still very good. And I'm excited to see a full season of Slater. So yeah, offense is good. I mean, tier 1 or 2 for every category offensively.
This offense should be awesome, which is the problem that we had last season, is that it was not awesome. Now, granted, they had injuries at wide receiver like no one's business, and they didn't have Quentin Johnson there. But this still should have been a much better offense than what it was, and why eventually Lombardi was fired as offensive coordinator, because it looked like a disaster at times, and the play calling did not make a ton of sense. And I thought Herbert was doing his best to bail him out of a lot of bad situations, but at the same time, that just wasn't enough.
Yeah, for the coverage going over to defense, this could be awesome. Like on paper, this could be awesome because if JC Jackson plays like JC Jackson again, instead of the guy who had a 28.7 Pro Football Focus grade last season in 244 snaps, you have Asante Samuel.
Bad.
Yeah, it was a mess. I mean, it was no getting around it. It was a mess. Asante Samuel Jr. as number 2, and you have Michael Davis in the mix as well. Could be a very good coverage unit. Here also, it's just here Taylor, another guy. You also have, is he still? Oh yeah, just here Taylor. Then you have Derwin James as a guy who is good at football when he gets to play. Definitely does a good job there. Other seed that could also use some work. I don't know if it's Alohi Gilman, Tay Crowder. They could use another safety. No denying that. So there's some weaknesses here. But again, this is just like, what are we getting out of JC Jackson? I have no idea. And if he doesn't hit, that's kind of they don't really seem to have like a great backup plan currently here. They have some undrafted free agents like the other guys that seemingly it would be for coverage. So like, this just feels like one of those I kind of have to throw my hands up and say, I guess it's tier 3.
Yeah, there is upside, I think, though, obviously, like you said. I think JC Jackson is going to have, I mean, he has to have a better season. But even then, like, when he was hurt, like Asante Samuel had a pretty solid year too. Michael Davis had a pretty solid season too when, he played. So maybe it works out a little bit and they patch it together again if Jackson's not healthy. But at the same time, they could really use Jackson to be healthy and at his best because it has a chance to be a really good group if all those guys are healthy.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The front seven, the notoriously lethal Chargers run defense of past years. We'll see how it does this year with Sebastian Joseph Day and Morgan Fox as kind of the two main interior defensive linemen. With Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack on the outside, they also drafted Tuli Tuilopu, who should be very good. Eric Kendricks and Kenneth Murray. We'll see what we get out of Kendricks at this point in his career and Murray at any point in his career. What are we getting here? So there's some, again, Austin Johnson still in the mix. So strangely, them paying okay players $10 million each to play football that did not make their defense work better. The run defense looked that much better. It's, the run defense is an issue. It just is. I don't know. This almost feels like one of those rare scenarios where I could go like tier 1 pass rush and tier 2 and tier 5 run defense. I think I'm going to go tier 4 run defense just because the edge rushers are very good. But we'll see.
Yeah, tier 1 pass rush though, right?
Yeah, tier 1 pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, Bosa's awesome. No notes there. I'm definitely taking a victory lap on this. I don't really care. Like, I was told all off season that I didn't see the vision or whatever it was, that Sebastian Joseph Day was better than what the numbers led on. Austin Johnson was the signing of the off season. Those guys didn't change anything. Like, yes, it was not the worst run defense in football by far, but it wasn't that great of a run defense still. Like, those guys aren't changing anything. And yes, this defense, this scheme does not lend itself to having an awesome run defense, but it's not like these guys are moving the needle at all.
Yeah, they have to start covering. Like, they have to start playing better pass defense. It's really the issue. Like, they're not going to be a good run defense. That's just not how it's going to work. But like, if you're going to go all out to stop the pass, you have to also be effective at stopping the pass.
Yes. Yeah, if you're going to go all out to stop it, like you said, they have to be good at stopping it. And so far, they haven't been. So we'll see.
Yeah. So as a whole, there's things to like about this team. There really is. I think that there's, I do think the Chargers, to me, I'm probably most optimistic about the Chargers this year than I have been. I think that they have more talent. I love that they finally addressed that third option, which they felt was really lacking in years past. I think their, offensive line should be good. I hope that the defense can figure it out. It's such a wild card, but I'm still going to go 11-6 here for the Chargers. They feel like a playoff caliber team. Will that be enough in the AFC? Remains to be seen, but that's where I'm going.
It's going to be close. I have them very close. Not going to reveal my predictions yet, but they're on the border for me. I do think this is a talented team. I do think they have to take the step. I guess here's my question. I'll give you 2 scenarios. You pick. What's more likely to happen? The Chargers are in the AFC Championship game, or Brandon Staley's fired before the season ends?
I think Brandon Staley's fired before the season ends just because of how tough. If they were in the NFC, I would say getting to the championship game. Or if this was just a normal year where like things were evened out. Like if for example, they did a full reseed once we got to the playoffs, then maybe I would say conference championship. But like they're gonna have to beat at least one like great team to get to the conference championship. It could happen, but I think it's probably more likely that they just miss the playoffs and like, after week 16 or so, they just get rid of Staley there. But I think Staley will stay. I actually think my guess is neither happens. I think Staley will stay the full year, but then probably get fired at the end of the year.
Okay, let's do another one. Is this team going to be a top 6 seed, or is Staley fired before the season ends?
I think top 6 seed, as in like in the AFC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because I think that teams don't like to fire head coaches when they're in the playoff run. I guess technically the Panthers did it last year, but that was like a very unique scenario where like, them having a terrible record but still in the playoff hunt. Like usually if you're in the playoff hunt, they'll keep the head coach there until the end of the year.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of pressure on this group, which is, sometimes it works out, and then sometimes it looks like a disaster. We're gonna see.
But there's not more pressure than who you have at number one, the reigning Super Bowl champions. Also, I should mention Chargers currently 10% of the votes say the Chargers will win the division, which is third because the Raiders have 11% of the vote because Raiders Nation likes to vote on things. Number one, with 76% of the vote, is the Kansas City Chiefs. That's just shy of San Francisco in the community tab for the highest out of any team in a division. Kyle, why do you have them winning the division?
Because they have the best player in football and they have the best coach in football. And especially when that best player in football plays quarterback, that goes a long way to being successful. So, yeah, I have the Kansas City Chiefs number one. I think they're easily going to be a Super Bowl contender for as long as Patrick Mahomes wants to play football. So, yeah, I think that's an awesome part of this team. I do think there is talent across the roster, and I think they've done, one of the things that we talked about when it came to the Tyreek Hill trade, as we keep revisiting year after year after year, is how are they going to fill out this roster now that they cut bait with him and traded him? Well, they still have Travis Kelce, the best tight end in the league. They have great offensive line now, I would say. At least very good. We're going to have some questions. We're going to have a talk about that.
Yeah, we'll discuss that when we get there.
Yeah. And I actually think that they're putting together some really nice pieces. Like this has a chance to be maybe the Chiefs' best defense of the Patrick Mahomes era. And I think it can be very good. There is one question, maybe two questions for me, but overall, I think it is still a really good group. And there's just, if you look just top to bottom, looking at both sides of the ball, there's just talent. There's talent, and you also have the best quarterback in football. So yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah. That's what it is. We'll start off with the positive. Patrick Mahomes, part of why I've kind of reworked this thing and I don't just go with based on the algorithm as I have in years past, is because Patrick Mahomes gets you more than just 4 wins every year. He's in a different level. So I can't just throw him in with the other tier 1 quarterbacks because he is significantly better, which is why now I, just give a prediction. I come up with my prediction live on each show. And then obviously Andy Reid adds a ton of value to that. So like you said, with Mahomes, the Chiefs should be Super Bowl contenders every year.
Yeah. I don't see any reason for that to change. He won the MVP last year. He's got a good shot of winning it this year. There's no notes with that. He is one of those transcendent generational players, and he by the end of his career, he's going to be in the conversation with Brady. He's going to be in the conversation with Manning, Rodgers, Montana, all of those guys, if he's not already. He's just that good, and he's been that impressive. Joe Flacco too, yeah. How can I forget? Yeah. By the way, DG, I did not say Joe Burrow was the best QB in the league. I said Joe Burrow was going to win MVP this year. That is a different conversation. The best player does not always win MVP, contrary to popular belief. Otherwise, Nikola Jokic would have won MVP in the NBA last year.
Yeah. Fair enough. Sometimes the player who had the best season doesn't even win MVP, like when Rodgers won it over Brady a couple years ago.
Or when Nikola Jokic didn't win MVP in NBA this year.
Sure. I guess
or when Joe Burrow didn't win it over Aaron Rodgers too.
Yeah, that was also another notable stuff. Yeah, never forgive that one. You talked, with Mahomes, the Chiefs deserve to be talked about as one of the best teams in football, if not the best team in football. But this is one of those things where on paper, are we sure the Chiefs have a great supporting cast? I think are we sure Mahomes has a great supporting cast around him is what I should say. Because he's Mahomes. We trust he can make it work. We saw what he did in the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce is amazing. Travis Kelce is an elite number 1 option. I don't care that he plays tight end. But they did lose a couple guys in the receiving core who part of what made that receiving core so good was how many different guys can do different things. Have Kadarius Toney. What are we getting out of Toney? The guy, if you look at his snap yards per snap, he actually averages if he had a full season, it'd be something like 1,400 yards a year. He's good when he's on the field. He just never is on the field. How can you trust this guy at this point? Sky Moore and MVS are still good options. And again, maybe some of these other, maybe Justin Ross, now that he's, healthy, comes through. Maybe Justin Watson, Richie James. What will they be able to do? I don't know. I think I'm going to go tier 3 receiving core. That's what I projected for it to be last year, and it ended up way overperforming. But it's I can't go much higher than that, I don't think.
I think that's fair just because there is still, I mean, outside of Kelsey, you just don't know 100%. Like you said, Tony has to be on the field. If you can guarantee me 14 Kadarius Tony games, like I would be like, okay, probably bump this up because I think he is that talented. If you can, I think Sky Moore is capable of taking a leap here. I think Rashay Rice is an interesting player. There are interesting prospects here. We just got to see him on the field. So I think it is fair to question that a little bit, but I mean, the benefit of this is that you have a quarterback who's going to elevate those weapons, and you're able to kind of disperse that money elsewhere. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of the it's like that conundrum when you talk about like San Francisco running game or Baltimore running game. This may grade out as like a tier 3 passing offense, but it is not going to perform like a tier 3 passing offense. It's going to perform probably like a tier 2 passing offense or a tier 1 passing offense because they have Mahomes and they have Andy Reid calling the plays.
Yeah, exactly. And while I still stand by the tier 3 wide receiver evaluation, there's added value with the head coach and quarterback play because of that. Receiving or running back room, I don't know. I'll give Pacheco tier 4. I know people would probably want it to be at least tier 3. He was solid last year, maybe in a bigger sample size. They don't have a ton of depth at the halfback position, so that's kind of what brings them down a tier for me. If they had solid, depth backs, I think I would probably feel better about moving them up. But then the offensive line. Let's talk about the offensive line. Unless you had something you wanted to mention with the halfbacks, I guess you could mention it in a second. The O line, I like the interior offensive line. The interior offensive line's good. Joe Thuney, awesome guard. Creed Humphrey, maybe probably the best center in football. He's the best center in football. He's played 2 years, been PFF's highest graded center both years he's played. Trey Smith, a very good right guard. But the tackle question is a question. They've replaced both tackles, Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor, who, neither one are analytics darlings. Let's phrase it that way. Jawan Taylor has been a fine pass blocking tackle. They're paying him $20 million a year. They're expecting him to be a good pass blocking tackle. We'll see. Donovan Smith has played good for Brady, but has really struggled. Really struggled last year and has really struggled when he had to block for Jameis Winston. So, which I don't think it's that dissimilar the way Mahomes and Winston like to move around in the pocket and stuff like that. Mahomes is obviously better at it, but I'm just saying in terms of how often they like to do it. I'm going tier 3 offensive line. Like, what are we getting out of these tackles?
I think that's, we talked about it this offseason. I think it's a fair question. Quickly on the running backs, if Pacheco plays like he did in the playoffs, this is a tier 3 running back room. And I think I like McKinnon more than you do. I think he's a game changer in that passing game. Okay. But anyway, moving on. Offensive line. I think Taylor's overpaid. I think he's expensive. Yeah. But I think he's going to be good next year. And I think it's going to be because I think they're going to they're playing to his strengths. Like you said, he's a better pass blocking guy than a run blocking guy. And he's not going to run block a lot when it comes to Kansas City. So I think he's going to be better in Kansas City. I think he's going to have a pretty good year. But I still think he's overpaid. But I think those are two different things, right? So I think he can obviously have a good year next year. I am concerned about Donovan Smith, which, by the way, I just want to make sure everybody heard. Jackson Kruger said that Patrick Mahomes and Jameis Winston are basically the same guy.
There's no difference. I can't tell the difference between them. Have we seen them in the same room? I don't know.
I don't know. But anyway, I am really concerned about Donovan Smith in this offense because this is not an offense that has a quick passing game. And like you said, he thrived because Brady threw the ball in like under 3 seconds basically every time. He barely ever held onto the ball. That is the exact opposite of what Patrick Mahomes does and why he's successful. So, yeah, I am concerned. And not only that, like it's not even just like the missed blocks and sacks, which are still bad for Smith in those situations. It's the penalties. I mean, how many times did Tampa Bay have a big play last year that just saw called back on a Donovan Smith hold?
All of them. All of the big plays were called back to the Donovan Smith. I was watching. It came up in my recommended, like the Manning cast when they watched Tom Brady's comeback from when the Buccaneers were down 10 against the Saints and came back and won. I was like, oh, I'll check that out. It's like 10 minutes long, the video. And then, of course, I forgot that they threw a game-winning touchdown, but then got called back due to a Donovan Smith holding penalty. But then they still threw another game-winning touchdown. It's like, oh yeah, right. Of course, that happened.
Yeah. So, I am concerned about that, but we'll see. But I agree with everything else. I do think Taylor is going to be better, though.
Yeah, we have Elijah in the chat saying, "Didn't KC have a quick passing game last year? They're capable of passing quickly, but they don't do it every. But part of their game still is when plays break down. Things going a long time as well.
Yeah, I mean they definitely can, and I think you saw it in the playoffs because Mahomes was hurt that they did
Hmm.
play a lot faster. Um, but he is also not afraid to try and he's one of those quarterbacks which I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It can be a great thing if you're good at it. Which obviously Mahomes is great at it. He's one of those guys that is willing to hold the ball longer for a great throw rather than a good throw, right? I think that sometimes he's asking his offensive line to hold on a little longer than they should. And that's not a great sign for someone like Smith, who's not exactly the quickest guy on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Let's move on to the defense. Why don't we? I like this coverage unit a good amount. I mean, I think
Mhm.
really what worked last year and kind of why we saw Kansas City's defense get, because remember, it wasn't great at the start of the year and got a lot better as the season went along. And it was the emergence of Jalen Watson and Josh Williams as two corners to kind of play off of L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie, who were kind of, really good all year. I mean, you had three rookie corners come in and all be effective players for them. And then, you also, L'Jarius Sneed, another effective corner for them. I want to see a little bit more out of Brian Cook. He thought it was fine last year, but you'd like to see him maybe take a step up. Got going to have to play in a bigger role, and we'll see how well he does. Mike Edwards has had some, he's been a fine third safety for Tampa Bay, although not coming off his best year. Justin Reed was very good last year for Kansas City. So I'm going to go tier 2 coverage. I think you could argue, do they have the elite shutdown corner? And we still do have a lot of young players who could maybe have some, ups and downs. But as a whole, a lot of depth here and a lot of good players here.
I do agree with that. I do like this coverage unit. And I think one of the things that I think Spagnuolo has done a really good job of with this group is they've been able to replace guys and still be pretty good, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they
Yeah.
they lost was it Fenton and still was pretty good. And I thought Javarius Ward was very good 2 years ago, and they replaced him and seemed fine. So,
Mm-hmm.
they've been able to replace guys. I am concerned about losing a safety again because I thought Thornhill was pretty good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Replacing Matthew and now replacing two guys who I thought were really good for them, I think is a little bit of a question. But like whether it's Brian Cook or I like Mike Edwards too. I thought Mike Edwards was a good pickup. So
Mm-hmm.
one of those guys I think can pan out at safety, and this could be a really good group. And they got good coverage linebackers, which I think helps.
Yeah. Linebackers obviously very good with Nick Bolton, Willie Gay, and you have Leo Chenal, the other guy, and you have Drew Tranquil in the mix as well. So they have like legitimately 4 linebacker options. So it's time to finally do the Chris Jones discussion
Yeah.
because Chris Jones has been sitting out. He wants a new contract. Says he's fine with sitting out. Which I believe he's going to be missing over $1 million a game for sitting out, which would be crazy. This is a completely different conversation if he plays. Because if he plays, this defensive line looks okay, right? You have George Karlaftis, who didn't have great stats last year, but did show some flashes, and we'll see what he can do in a bigger role. You have Mike Dana as another interior defensive lineman, Derek Noddy, another interior guy. You have Charles Omenhu, and they drafted Felix Nduke Uzama in the first round. So they have options in this situation. Just the question is, if he's not there, this is a completely different scenario where now it looks like an actively bad defensive line. So I think what I'm going to do is go, I think for now, I'm going to go tier 2 for both run defense and pass rush, but this could fall off a cliff if Jones isn't playing.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of depth pieces here, but like there's not any like great pieces, great options. And what props it up is that they have a absolute superstar and who I thought, was the defensive player of the year last year. Chris Jones was awesome. Chris Jones was debatably the best player in football on the defense side last year. So yeah, I do think that's a huge issue if he's not playing. Um, but if he plays, I'm not worried at all. That's the thing. I'm not worried about
Right.
anything. I think everything kind of falls into place. I think Karlaftis can bounce back and have a good year too. But yeah, I mean, it almost feels like they kind of have to like get this figured out, right? They have to they don't have an option not to let Chris Jones play.
Yeah, and he's only 29 too. Like, he's not like that old. I don't know. Part of me is wondering, like, is this a move where like you just find another interior defensive lineman somewhere else and just do like a 1-for-1 trade? Maybe a guy who isn't as good but it isn't paid as much. Like, if you really don't have the money, like do something like that.
I mean, maybe, but at the same time, like I don't even think that's enough. Like, what I'm trying to think, like, who's like a replacement level? Like, if this is a Dalvin Tomlinson, this is a tier 5 defensive
Well,
line.
I'm not saying you trade him for Dalvin Tomlinson. I'm saying like
Right.
a good. I think like Jeffrey Simmons, for example.
Yeah, but
Simmons is 3 years younger and is I think still a really good player, not quite Chris Jones. Like that would be a move that I could see.
yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense for Kansas City. I don't know why Tennessee would do that, but I don't
Well, because
know.
you're getting the better player.
Yeah, maybe, but it feels like I'm, still solving your problem. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they just say Chris Jones is a superstar. So, I mean,
And maybe throw in a draft pick or something to make it work.
yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. It is complicated. But they need him to play. Like they can't sell him short enough to where that if they have to trade him, they're not getting good enough value. This isn't a team that can take draft picks for Chris Jones and need someone to step in and can play that position.
Right. Yeah. So as a whole, there are concerns here with the Chiefs, and quite frankly, I did not love this Chiefs offseason. Whereas last year, I didn't love the Tyreek Hill trade, but from that point on, I pretty much praised every single move they made. This offseason has been very different. I have not loved a lot of their moves. I did not love their draft personally. I didn't love a lot of their free agent signings. I'm not a huge Jawan Taylor fan, and that got Chiefs fans mad at me. So you got some offensive line issues. You got some receiving core issues. There is, the Chris Jones thing, which is very concerning. 14-3, my prediction for the Chiefs.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna be a really good football team, and I guess the thing is like if Chris Jones isn't playing until week 8, and all of a sudden maybe is kind of slow to come back and not quite 100% ready to go, like, do you take this team off of like? Do you see us? Do you? How do I phrase this? Because they're still probably a Super Bowl contender, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, how concerned? What is your red flag going if Chris Jones isn't 100% and this defense isn't up to standard?
I mean, yeah, it's like they're still a football team. Like Patrick
Yeah,
Mahomes isn't like. I mean, I know he puts up video game numbers, but he still isn't playing in a video game. Like they still could. He's not a god. Like they could miss, be in a tough
maybe.
spot and be like a 5 seed or whatever. I mean, I still think, I still think they'd be the favorite to win this division even without Chris Jones. But then to me, it's now a real discussion between them and the Chargers. If he's not, Chris Jones is probably like a 2-win player.
Yeah, I mean he probably is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean I'm still pretty bullish that this team's going to be great, but this is a really we keep saying it, but I think it is true, and I think it is a good talking point. This is a really competitive conference that I think even the smallest margins like Chris Jones not 100% because he sat out 8 weeks of the season, I think could be a huge difference between this team winning another Super Bowl and not making the Super Bowl. But I do feel like that's nitpicking because no matter what I say about this team is a Super Bowl contender because they have won 5.
Yeah, exactly. What's crazy? Yeah, conference. I mean, currently I have the Chargers projected to win 11 games, and I believe I currently have 5 teams. Is it 5? I think it might be 6 teams that I have projecting to go 12 wins or higher currently in the AFC. So that would be the 7th best team, but there still is another team. Someone has to win the AFC South as well. So that means that the Chargers wouldn't even be a playoff team with 11 wins if my projections hold. Like that's how loaded this conference is.
Yeah. We're going to do that next week. It's going to be crazy when you actually do it out. Cause I'm going to go through every single game and pick every game.
Okay.
And
good.
once you see the records here, it's going to be crazy what this looks like. It's going to be a bloodbath. There are going to be teams who could legitimately win the NFC that aren't making the playoffs. That's
Right.
what it is. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, obviously I would still probably pick Philly and San Francisco over the Chargers, but the Chargers could absolutely win the NFC if they're in the NFC, but they're in the AFC, so they're screwed. Like, it's just absolutely insane that they could miss the playoffs at that point.
Yeah, it's wild. So next week, we still got a little more to talk about here, but next week what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over not just the AFC South, but we're going to give all of our predictions. So, for example, I currently have the Chiefs and the Dolphins tied for my record predictions. So I'll tell you who I think will win the AFC, or maybe it'll be a team from the AFC South, who will be the team I'm projecting to win the AFC. We're going to give our predictions for all of the awards as well, like MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and Offensive Rookie of the Year. And then we're both going to give our full predictions for who's making the playoffs, who's making the conference championship, who's making the Super Bowl, and who's winning it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So make sure to tune in, because even if you're not like, it's going to say AFC South preview. So you say, why am I tuning into that? But it's going to, at the very end, we're going to go through it all. So if you want to hear about the final predictions, make sure to tune in for your team.
Yeah, we also have this chat. Mahomes are the devil. Jackson is one of the most worthless people on this earth. Just saying. I believe that's Jackson Mahomes. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself.
I hope it's not you. You're worth more to me, man. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm the most worthwhile person on earth, but I can't be. There's got to be more worthless people than me.
Yeah, Wander Franco.
Yeah, apparently. Sore subject, Kyle.
Oh man, do you think he's on the Rays by the end of the year?
No, I don't think so. Unless somehow they come up with like some evidence that like he's is fully exonerated or something, which I don't think is happening. I think there's no chance he plays this year.
Well, not plays. I just saying, is he on the Rays roster at the end of the year?
I think it's going to be like this until news. I think we're going to be. I think it's going to be a while before we figure out anything.
Yeah. Crazy.
On the bright side, the Rays have been winning. The guy we called up to replace Wander Franco has been playing well. Hit a grand slam.
That's good. Mm-hmm. So got a little bit going. Little bit of momentum going there. This baseball season has been wild. Red Sox are done again.
Are they? I saw that they were competitive for a minute. Did they fall off again?
They lost to the Astros. I mean, this team, they win 3 or 4 games and everyone says they're back, and then they lose 3 or 4 games and then they're not back. So I've given up. They're not making the playoffs. They're not going to climb Toronto and Seattle. Seattle hasn't lost in like 3 months.
Yeah.
We're not making the playoffs.
Hey, you never know. 4.5 games? That's possible.
We're not making it. We got to jump 2 teams. That's
at least
problem.
They're close enough that you can root for it. You can enjoy it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed some of the games, but
you're not the Yankees at least.
We need an Aaron Boone extension. Can't get rid of that guy. Too important to the franchise.
Oh man, what are the Yankees doing? It all came back to when they decided to not sign Bryce Harper. That was ever since then. I don't know what they got going
on. Well, they paid. They paid a lot of guys a lot of money to not do anything. That's the problem that they have.
Is that good? Is that a good idea to pay a bunch of guys who aren't good at baseball to play baseball?
Giancarlo Stanton's hitting 196.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But hey, he hits the ball far. Good for him.
Yeah.
Where's Josh Donaldson at? Let's go to Josh Donaldson. Josh Donaldson's hitting 142.
Jesus.
There's just there's not a lot of good players here. They're I don't know. Like their second best player is Gleyber Torres,
Good thing they didn't do anything at the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's true.
Watching though, they added that one like relief. That's the funniest thing is the last move in the trade deadline was they added like some random reliever, like last minute.
Yeah, the one thing they definitely didn't need. Garrett Cole can't pitch against the Red Sox, so that's fun too. So I mean, that's been the best. That's been the best news of the summer. Watching this Yankees team, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. It's been too funny.
It's been a good time. It's kept us through the off season, which is coming to an end here. Football off season nearly done. Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That is at On the Sideline JK.
K ran in the chat. Maybe. I won't turn it down if I have an idea. I don't like to force it, but if I come up with an idea for a comedy skit, I'll do it because they are fun to make. But yeah. Of course, if you like audio only podcast, anywhere you get the audio only podcast, On the Sideline podcast, that's where you can find it. Just search that. Kyle, any final thoughts?
Looking forward to the weekend. Looking forward to let's see, what am I doing this weekend? Oh, I'm watching Premier League soccer. I picked a Premier League soccer team to follow
Who are
for
you
no
following?
reason. What's West Ham United? So
I feel like all Premier League soccer teams are composed of like the same, like three of the same 5 words.
well, they have like a United or a football club, or they all kind of have football club, but like United is a big thing.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, yeah, I don't know. It'll be fun. We'll see how it goes. I wanted a team in London, and they're in London, so here we
That's not the
go.
team that is that the team the bad team in Ted Lasso, or is that a different one?
They are the bad team in Ted Lasso.
Why would you choose the bad team in Ted Lasso to be your favorite team?
I don't know. They seem fun.
Oh, you know who? No, which team? I'm a big Cobra Kai fan. That's who I'm hoping succeeds this year.
Don't you kind of cheer for them in the show? Isn't that the point?
Well, I never watched the show. Oh, did I get it wrong? I thought they were the bad guys, right?
They were the bad guys, but I think the whole point of the the new show is like they're like you root for them.
Okay. Well, either way, you get the point.
But anyway, yeah, we're gonna win the Premier League. I'm just kidding. No, we're not. That seems
Of course, Kyle roots for a London team. Yeah, of course you would. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. Listen, if I'm traveling to England, there's probably nowhere else I'm going. I do like London, so that worked for me. And I didn't want to be a bandwagon fan, so I didn't choose Arsenal or Chelsea, and absolutely not picking Tottenham because that just seems like torture. So West Ham, here we go. We're up.
I do pretty good in my when I play Retro Goal, the phone game.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
It's a fun soccer phone game.
All right, well, yeah, that's cool. Do you play FIFA?
No, I played a soccer phone game.
That's good. Yeah, I don't know. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see how that all that goes. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Good show, Kyle.
All right, good stuff. Let's get out of here. AFC South, full predictions next week. Make sure to tune in for that. We might have a spicy take. We'll see.
Okay, and then the week after, we're doing our week 1 preview. So we're here.
God.
Season's right here.
Yeah. September 6th, season preview. September 7th, we have an actual football game to watch.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Yeah, everyone, be on the lookout next week, 5 Eastern, where we'll do our final preview of the season. And until next time, have a good one.
Peace.